Today I'm going to be showing you how to do loops in Python. Before you watch this video, I recommend you go to my video about if, elif, and else statements. That's really the background to all this. It'll make a lot more sense if you watch those first, because when I do the if, else, and elif statements, it's going to be more of a basic overview here. So without no further ado, let us begin. So here's a little reference sheet explaining the symbols and their meanings, and here explain some of the basic rules of if and elif statements. So basically the if and elif statements ask questions, and if the conditions are true, then a result is printed. And to add to this, if the first statement that is true is printed, it's the only one that's printed, even if the other statements below it are true. So let's start off with while loops. So we're going to start with number 1 equals 7. If number 1 equals 7, while true, print high in the sky. So what just happened here? Well, the first thing you do is you assign the variable a value. Assign the variable, and the variable is number 1. The variable stores a value, and the value that's being stored is 7. With the variable that stores a value, the variable is number 1. Use the if statement to ask a question. The question being asked is, does number 1 equal 7? And yes, it does. Before I go on, I'm going to make this simpler by adding step numbers to it. So this is step 1, this is step 2, and this down here is step 3. When the condition is true, then an infinite loop is created. And the condition is true. Number 1 does equal 7. And for step 4, you just print the results. Now suppose you didn't want the while loop to go on forever. Well, there's another value called break. So the break basically stops the while loop from becoming infinite. I'm going to add, for part, I'm going to add while loops with elif and else statements. This is going to be a very broad review, so this will be the final time I say it, but watch my video about if, elif, and else statements. So suppose I put this here. This is a false statement. Number 1 does equal 7. Now the code up here isn't wrong, it's just the condition isn't met. So I'm going to use an elif statement. Elif number 1 is greater than or equal to 6, while true, print go, go, go. I'm going to put a break. So basically what has happened here is I've changed this value from stating that number 1 equals 7 to number 1 does not equal 7. And the latter statement is false. Number 1 does equal 7. Since that statement is false, we use an ELIF statement. So it's very similar to what happened to above. So for step 6, since the if statement is false, then you use the ELIF statement to ask another question. And this ties into step 7, which is when the ELIF statement is true, then an infinite loop is created. And for the go for step 8, you print the results. Now for step 9, the break stops the infinite loop. You can have as many ELIF statements as you want. So you can have one ELIF statement to a million. But if the if statement is correct and all 100 ELIF statements are correct, then only the if statement is printed. And suppose the if statement and the first 50 ELIF statements are false, and the rest of the ELIF statements are true, only the 51st ELIF statement would be printed. So it's kind of a top-down thing. So it kind of ties back up to here. The first statement that is true is the only statement printed, even if the statements below it are true. So suppose this is false. Suppose I said number 1 or 7 is less than 6. 7 is not less than 6. Once again, the code is correct, but the ELIF statement is false. So now we go on to the else statement. Now, unlike the if and ELIF statement, the else statement just is used, doesn't ask a question. Once again, it's the usual thing. So for step 10, when the if and ELIF statements are false, then the else statement is used. Step 11, this creates an infinite loop. Step 12, you print the results. For step 13, this stops the loop from becoming infinite. Now suppose, what I've showed you is how to print the result infinitely, or how to print it once. What if you wanted to print it 3 times, or 4 times, or 8 times, or 10 times? Well, you can use add counters to while loops. So we're going to start off with number 2 equals 5. If number 2 does not equal 4, counter equals 0, while counter is less than 5, print, laugh out loud. So what has happened here? Let's go step by step. For step 1, you assign the variable, and the variable is number 2, a value, which is 5. For step 2, you use the variable, which is number 2, to ask a question in an if statement. For step 3, you decide where you begin counting. So you start counting at 0, is basically what you do. Now for step 4, this is the number you cannot touch. So for step 5, you print the results. And for step 6, this is how much you count by. So what has happened? Well, I've assigned the variable, number 2, a value, number 5, and I use that to ask a question. And the conditions are true here. 5 does not equal 4. So because of that, we start counting from 0. 0 is where we start. And we count up to 5. And we print the results and we count by 1. So we start counting at 0. And we count by 1. We add everything by 1. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. We add by 1. And it cannot touch 5. So here's how the program's counting. You start at 0, and you add 1, then you add 2, then you add 3, and you add 4. So I'm going to create another one to show my point. Now I'm not going to repeat everything because I've already explained this several times. When I say I'm not going to repeat it, I'm not going to write notes for every single thing. So for number 3 equals -3 if number 3 equals -3, while this would be a counter, while counter is greater than -1, print forever. And here, why don't we count by, say, 2. So what has happened here? Well, we assign the variable number 3 a value, which is -3. Then we use the variable to store a value to ask a question. And the question is number 3 equal to -3? And yes, it is. And once again, we start counting at 0. And when the counter is greater than -1, you print the results. Since 0 is greater than -1, you just go on forever. Let's suppose by 2. So once again, the numbers cannot touch -1. They cannot count to that. So we start at 0, and it can't touch -1. And when you go back by -2, that pretty much goes right to as close as you can to -1 as possible. So it only prints once. So I'm going to summarize counters one more time. You assign the variable a value, you do a normal if statement and you set the counter where you start counting at a certain value. It could be 1, it could be 100, it could be 1,000,000. That's where you start counting. And when the and with the while counter, it establishes the value it cannot touch. So it cannot count to -1. It can get close to it, as close as the program allows, but it cannot touch it. And the counter down here establishes how much you'd be counting by. So now we're going on to part 2, for loops. For loops are way easier than while loops. So without further ado, let us begin. For I in range 3, print cat. So basically what I've done is for step 1, this tells the program how many times to print the results. And this, for step 2, you print the results. Before I leave, please tell me how I can improve the videos. I'm still new to this, so I just want some help, you could say. And also, created a new website with all my videos on it. In my YouTube channel, go to posts and look at the post with the drone and click on the link and the website. It's still new, I'm still working on it, so it's still a little rough around the edges, but thank you all for watching me.